You know what's weird is that my video is so delayed here that I literally just sat down at the computer and my video's going. So that
must have been creepy. Imagine
it's weird. It's like I saw myself come in and like take Robert's harness off.
Welcome to Scary Mystery Surprise,
where we talk about scary things that surprised us around the internet.
I'm Edwin.
And I'm Michelle.
Alrighty, Michelle. You're a hard worker. I mean, you are a hard worker, right? But like in the story, you're an extra hard worker.
Like a miner?
Kind of like that. Maybe not that extreme. You go out, you pick up like hay, you distribute it to different places. Like you sell, fix things. Like you just try to get by, like just doing your best. And you work down in the hills of Venezuela. As you're walking down these valleys and beautiful scenery, you snap out of it for a bit. You're like, wait a minute, I got to hurry up because it's getting dark. So you start walking faster and faster because the darkness is approaching. And as you're walking down this road, like this is an actual road, not like a dirt trail or anything. This is a road where cars pass by, but you saw the last car like a while back. It's just you and the road and the hills and the trees off in the distance. But you notice that other people around their houses are picking up their things and their shops and rushing to get everything inside their house and get inside. You're so tired, just keep walking. You try not to pay attention, even though you know what this means. You're almost home, right? You're walking down. You can kind of see your house in the distance. And up ahead, you see your husband. He's waiting for you at the front porch. And he's yelling at you, signaling something.
God, that'd be so annoying. It's like you've been working all day, you're on your way home, and then there's your husband on the porch doing random like air signs at you. It's like, if this isn't about dinner, don't talk to me.
He frantically waves his arms and obviously is saying to hurry up. But yet you stop and you put your hand to your ear. You're like, what? Anyway, he's going a little crazy now. He's going mad. And then you hear it. But it's not your husband. You hear this whistling sound all around you from these hills. And the tone itself, like it's an actual melody, right? It just keeps repeating. It goes... You begin to run, all dramatic, like you're just like, like you're running. And as continuing the drama, like your bag kind of falls off your shoulder. You keep running and you look back and you're kind of stretching out your hands like, no, like it's all slow-mo. You look back to your husband, you look at your bag, you're like, what do I do? And then the whistles get louder.
Just forget the bag. Just go.
But what if you have money in there? What if like something that...
Well, why did I drop it then?
No, I don't know. Well, I guess
your husband's already... Well, maybe he's signaling because he locked himself out of the house. And this is just like another... Oh, God.
In between the whistling now, you can kind of hear him say like, leave up behind. Hurry up. And you're like, oh, now I heard him. So now you listen to him and you start running like full speed towards the house. You shut the door behind you. Your husband locks it, closes all the windows, grabs a stick that he had by the side of the door, and you and your husband are just kind of still there, just waiting. The whistling is getting closer and then it starts fading away. Off until you just hear the regular wind and the rustling of the trees. Now you can finally catch your breath, and now you really start breathing like, okay, you're safe for that night.
What happened to my purse or my bag or whatever?
You left it.
I cannot do two things at once. That is a fact. So.
Okay, well, we can change it with the story. So let's go back to the scene. You finally catch your breath. And then your husband's like, don't worry, I got this. And you make him go out to the street.
Thank you.
And grab your purse. And then he makes it back and you're safe. All right. In South America, there's this famous legend, this urban legend, that usually it's used to scare children and believers of the paranormal and supernatural and everything like that in the darkness of the hills. They say that there's this thing that comes out and they call it the Whistler, El Silbón. Basically, this entity that's forever roaming the dark hills and the forests of these places in South America in search of something. The stories go from anything like this is just a cursed man who's carrying something behind his back and just roaming dark streets, regular roads and everything. El Silbón has been known to bring fear. You can kind of compare it to La Llorona type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once you grow older, you're just kind of like, oh, I used to be really afraid of that. But then if it is like La Llorona, it's more like, yeah, this thing is real and you believe it. Even as an adult, you try to scare kids with it because also like, hey, be careful because I heard this thing and I can't explain it. So it still doesn't make sense to you as an adult. The figure itself has been mixed with the countrywide culture, like in general. In Venezuela, for example, it's just as important as like the food, the music, anything like that of high importance. In some countries,
Whistler?
Yeah, the Whistler, the Silbón. Yeah, El Silbón. Yeah, imagine the Mothman in that town where it happened. Like that, kind of.
Okay.
In some countries, this character has been mentioned in presidential speeches. It even has its own festival in its honor. And even though there are different versions about it, they all talk about a dark figure who roams in the night. If you're out in the woods, you risk an encounter with a tall man. Some saying that he's between 20 to 40 feet tall. So it seems a bit exaggerated even for a legend.
My God, that's taller than a tree. That's like, like how does he hide? You'd see him coming like a million miles away.
He's like an antenna, like a radio tower just kind of coming up, dude.
Jesus Christ. Like, I guess we should like hide because what the hell is that?
His clothes are old and dirty from many thousands of kilometers he has roamed. Some say that even his physical features cannot be accurate because, like as in how they're described, because he usually kills all of his victims.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's a case of like, you see him, you're dead. He has to kill you because you saw him. This is how they say that this started, right? A man was working for his father on their farm. There were long days in that farm, typical farm work. And one day he looked up from the ground to find one of the neighbors was running up to him. And he was like upset. What is it? The guy asked him. Turns out that this other guy explains that somebody had murdered his wife after an argument. As in the farmer's wife.
Wait, the farmer's wife or the guy running up to tell him?
Basically, the guy who came running and it was like, someone murdered your wife.
Oh, okay.
The farmer was super pissed and he ran to seek revenge. So he found who did it or whoever they claimed did it and killed him with that knife. Some say that this fight had been between his own father and him. Others say that it was his father-in-law. In that case, he goes, kills the father-in-law. So I guess there's two murderers now, right? Like there's the guy that killed the wife and then there's the husband that killed the murderer. So now there's two murderers.
The farmer is the guy. Okay.
The farmer's grandfather was like, you shouldn't have killed that guy. Because he's like, you shouldn't fight fire with fire. Like, if you already murdered somebody, like, you shouldn't go and murder someone because you're a murderer too. So
right.
He wanted to punish him. So they tied him up and called up other farmers to come and whip him. They also rubbed salt on his wounds to add more pain.
Jeez.
After seeing the farmer just all beat up there, the grandfather was like, okay, that's enough. Everyone stop whipping him. So everyone listened to the grandfather because you got to listen to him. He's the grandfather.
Right.
And then they released him, right? But not because his punishment was over. He was actually going to be sent off to die on his own. And so he ran off into the woods, quickly but still in a great deal of pain, before two large black dogs were released to chase him straight to his death among the trees. Yeah. This farmer's body was never found, But some say that his spirit was cursed and now spends the rest of eternity seeking revenge on drunks and adulterers. And if you hear his tune, the whistling, he's coming after you. I know we have a lot of questions about this because, okay.
Number one, his punishment was really harsh. It's like he's being punished for killing the man, and that man is not being held accountable for killing the wife at all. So it's a little like, what's going on here?
I'm sure that thousands of people have had that exact same thought, and I think this is why we have different versions of the story. For example, the Venezuelan version says that he was a spoiled son instead of a hardworking farmer. But in eerie rendition of the story, this one ends up a lot worse than this. After an altercation, a man killed his own father. That was supposedly another version of the story. The mother was terrified at the collapse of the family, so she complained to her own father. By the way, just cultural reference here. Families in like Latin American countries typically are very close and multi-generational. Like they communicate with each other. They like take care of each other like that. They're all like a unit. So this includes in-laws, great-grandparents, like everybody, right? So they're all very involved. So anyway, this is why the mother complained to her own father. That's when this guy was tied up to a tree, whipped until he bled. And as part of his punishment, he was given his father's remains in a sack to face his own demons forever.
Oh, so that's part of the sack that he carries.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I like this version better, where it's like he killed his father, and then the grandfather's like, now you will be punished. That makes more sense to me than the other tale.
And there's a few others, like some of these involve cheating husbands, cheating wives, all this other stuff. But, you know, these are some of the main ones. In this other version of the story, he also ran off into the woods. 2 large dogs were sent after him and they killed him. But that's what people say, like, oh, they killed him, but now his ghost roams around. Other people say that, oh, the dogs didn't kill him and he ended up escaping and growing up really tall. And
he grew 40 feet tall, just being in the woods. That's what happens when you just wander in the woods and you leave society. You just start to grow.
You start eating healthy. I mean,
the Whistler diet.
It's so easy. I gained 30 feet. Results are not typical.
Yeah.
They say that in Colombia, El Silbón targets drunks and stalks the region of Los Llanos, an actual real place, especially during the rainy nights in May and June. So we're approaching. In this version, he isn't quite as evil, but rather represents death instead of revenge. But either way, in the Colombian version, not everyone is safe either way. Like, he still kills victims, and it's because they were doing something that they weren't supposed to do. Usually these things are like, don't cheat,
don't do that. Some creature's going to kill you, yada, yada, yada.
Now, like I said earlier, like this legend might remind you of La Llorona. There's also this thing called, the Sack Man. There's a Sack Man from Latin American countries. Like there's this.
I want to learn about Sack Man. What's Sack Man?
It's kind of a similar thing like La Llorona. Have you heard of the Bubak? Bubak? No?
No.
La Sayona, Venezuela? No?
No.
These are like cautionary tales of like, be careful of these things, right? El Silbón takes the cake here. El Silbón is one of those super, super popular urban legends / really cool ghost stories from over there. And through the many versions of this story that have been passed down, I definitely found my favorite. In this one, he was a brat, right? Spoiled kid. He was rejecting food. He didn't want to eat poor food. He didn't want to eat rice and beans. He wanted something else. He didn't like his family. He didn't like that lifestyle. It just didn't fit him,
All right.
Once his family started doing a little bit better, he started demanding even more. And his parents didn't do much to help out the situation. Like, they didn't want to fix him. But one day, he ordered his father to hunt for a deer.
Bring me a deer, father.
Sure, and this is South American accent, by the way, highly accurate. So the father goes out into the woods to get a deer. During that time of the year, the deer had gone a little more inland, but the father couldn't find one, so he came back empty-handed. The son was so pissed off that it killed his father, cut out his liver and heart, and then he brought the innards to his mother to cook them for dinner.
This is a good version of this story, because what the fuck? What the fuck?
Yeah. The mother begins to suspect that something is wrong when the meat is far too tough to be that of a deer.
Oh, this seems like my husband.
I know this liver.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Soon, she finds out that the guts she has been cooking belong to her husband. And so she lays a curse on her son forever. Enter the grandfather. Ties the young man to a post, whips him until the skin of his back was flapping.
Oh.
He was released, and in a bit of relief, knowing that he would now begin to heal, he looked to his grandfather and was like, "Hey, grandfather, forgive me." But instead, the grandfather gave him the remains of the young man's father in a sack, cursing him to forever carry the bones of his father. And then he ran off into the woods, the two large dogs running after him. I don't know about these two large dogs. Like,
yeah,
why?
I'm imagining like Cerberus or something, like they must be black with like red eyes or something like that, possibly shadow-like.
Salivating, just like they haven't eaten for 2 days.
Yeah.
El Silbón is said to roam the area of Los Llanos, and that in the summer, when the savanna of Venezuela burns from the lack of water, people can see him.
Ooh.
He sits among the trees, stuck in the shade, and he only wanders when it's raining. He roams to fulfill his curse, the one of vengeance, on people who have done wrong. And he tries to correct himself for his mistakes in that way. So, like this last version of the story where he seeks forgiveness, he's kind of trying to punish people that are seeking vengeance. You know what I mean? Because he did it. Now he's like, no, you shouldn't do that. So he goes and tries to punish them. But they say that he can also punish innocent victims, which, what the heck?
Yeah, there's no moral here. He's just a creepy thing.
Yeah, and it makes sense because, I mean, he did kill somebody, like in his, the legend goes that he's like that. He reacts. He doesn't think, he just acts and then has to deal with the consequences. So they say that he tears people to pieces and pulls out their bones for his collection where he carries the remains of his father.
Oh my God, the idea of pulling a bone out of flesh is...
The giant creature roams in the dark, whistling his deathly tune. His hat hides his face as the hunched body creeps through the darkness of the hills and streets. The tune of his whistle is said to harm those who hear him from a distance, and doesn't hurt you if it's heard up close. Drunks on the streets have heard his melody far enough away to set them straight. And they say that on certain nights, he'll pick up a house to rest by. He slings the sack over him and back to the ground, and then crouches over it. He opens it and smiles because his collection is growing.
Ooh.
And one by one, he counts the bones in the sack, laying them neatly on the ground. He puts them back, ties up the sack once again, and steps out into the darkness, forever roaming the hills and dark streets in search of wrongdoers.
I had never heard of the Bone Man or the Whistle Guy or the Whistler.
I like that name, the Bone Man.
The Bone Man. I mean, it seems like that's his priority. The bones seem like a priority now, not any of the morality there. He's coming to steal your bones.
It's a very creepy creature. So if you ever hear that whistling, run. Especially if you've done something wrong, because it's going to get you.
I'd just run anyway, because you don't know what kind of mood he's going to be in that day.
I can't imagine. I'm kind of glad I didn't grow up in, that area, because people that were commenting, like, I used to hear that sound in the mornings, or I used to hear that at night. I always thought it was birds.
Which it could be, but it also could be a weird bone man who's just sitting out under your window, just playing his whistle. I'm assuming it's a whistle made of a bone. Personally, I'm assuming it's a flute made of bone. Since you can do that. You can make it out of bone. But I like the idea of him just whistling with his mouth.
Yeah, I can imagine that, him just whistling. That's cool. That's a cool version. I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't whistle anymore.
I can't whistle. I've never learned.
What are we going to talk about next week, Michelle?
I don't know, but I think it'll be a surprise. Scary Mystery Surprise is hosted by Michelle Newman and
Edwin Covarrubias. This podcast was edited and sound designed by Sarah Vorhees Wendel of VW Sound.